Right. So today we're going to dive deep into Santiago Ramón y Cajal.
Oh, okay.
You know, the father of modern neuroscience. But
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
but is that really it? I mean, was he really just like this,
Yeah.
singular genius?
Right.
Or was it more like being in the right place at the right time?
Interesting question.
So we've got, to help us with this, excerpts from his Wikipedia page, which honestly sometimes reads like an adventure novel.
Really? Wow.
By the end of this deep dive, I think you'll understand not just like what Cajal discovered,
Okay.
but how like his life actually shaped his science.
Interesting.
And how all that science, from back then is
Yeah.
still shaping us today.
That's fascinating, yeah. It's really interesting you put it that way because his early life does seem to foreshadow so much of that. It's like, we're not talking about some quiet kid in the lab, right?
Right.
This was, like young Cajal, barely 11 years old,
Yeah.
ends up in jail. Wow. For building a homemade cannon.
Oh, my God.
He used it, too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Blew up a neighbor's gate.
No way.
Yeah.
That's not your average
No.
science fair project.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I guess it does show a certain
It shows drive.
yeah. I mean,
And she did.
was this just like youthful hijinks or
Yeah.
or was there something more to this like rebellious streak?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of scientists back then were kind of bucking tradition,
Yeah.
but he took it to another level.
He did.
Yeah. It makes you wonder if that same impulse to challenge authority
Yeah.
is what allowed him to later completely overturn the prevailing theory of how the brain worked.
Exactly, yeah.
So we've got this rebellious kid,
Mm-hmm.
but then his father, an anatomy professor,
Okay.
starts taking him to graveyards
Oh, wow.
to study human remains.
Okay.
That's a bit intense.
Pretty intense, yeah.
Even for someone really fascinated by science, I think.
It definitely wasn't your typical father-son bonding, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I think it really does speak to the era.
Okay.
You have to remember, this was before medical imaging,
Yeah.
before readily available photographs.
Yeah.
If you wanted to understand the human body, sometimes you had to get up close and personal.
And Cajal's later work was all about visualizing the brain, right?
Yeah.
Drawing these incredibly intricate illustrations of neurons.
That's right.
So do you think this early exposure, as macabre as it was,
You're right.
played a role in his artistic development?
It's certainly possible.
Yeah.
Not only did he have to grapple with the complexity of anatomy from a young age, but he also had to find ways to represent it visually, even if just in his own mind. It's almost like his brain was being trained for this kind of detailed scientific illustration from the very beginning.
That's interesting because later on, those drawings were essential for him.
Yeah.
They were it was like the scientific Instagram of their day,
Right.
showcasing his discoveries
Absolutely.
in a way that just words alone couldn't.
Exactly. Yeah, this was long before
Right.
high-resolution photography was commonplace in labs, right?
Yeah.
So Cajal's talent wasn't just artistic. It was essential for communicating his science. Imagine, trying to convince the world of a revolutionary new theory about the brain.
Right.
But all you have are words and maybe some crude sketches.
Yeah.
His drawings were so detailed, so accurate.
Yeah.
They basically were the proof.
Okay, so we've got this rebellious streak, artistic talent fostered in, let's say, unusual ways.
Okay.
And then we jump ahead to his time in the Spanish Army.
Right.
He's sent to Cuba, contracts malaria and tuberculosis.
Right.
It's a pretty,
Yeah. It's a pretty rough period. Rough period, yeah. It's such a stark contrast to the meticulous work he'd become known for.
Yes.
You have to wonder, did this brush with mortality make him even more driven to understand the delicate machinery of life?
That's interesting.
Did it give him a sense of urgency?
Yeah.
Knowing how easily it could all be taken away?
It definitely adds another layer to his story.
Yeah.
He recovers in the Pyrenees Mountains, which, you'd think would be a peaceful time.
Yeah.
But knowing Cajal, he's probably already sketching out nerve cells in his mind.
That's probably right.
Even as he's taking in the scenery.
Oh, totally.
Back in Spain, he jumps into his academic career.
Yeah.
Starting with pathology and histology.
Right.
But his real passion lay elsewhere. And it's fascinating how, like, one single tool developed by another scientist would end up, like, catapulting him to fame.
Absolutely.
We're talking about Golgi's staining method, right?
Yes.
I know it allowed researchers to see neurons in more detail, but for someone who, maybe hasn't taken a neuroscience class,
right?
Can you break down, like, why this was such a big deal?
It was like going from a blurry map to, like, a high-definition satellite image.
Oh, wow.
Before Golgi's method.
Okay.
The nervous system was this continuous web, a sort of like biological internet.
Okay.
Where signals flow freely in all directions.
Like those old sci-fi movies where the brain is just this glowing...
work of energy.
But Golgi's technique allowed researchers to see individual neurons for the first time.
Wow.
Stained in this, like, stark black against a transparent background.
So you could, like, really see them.
Yeah. Wow.
It was like a visual revelation.
But it was Cajal that really took this tool and ran with it.
He did.
He wasn't the only one using Golgi's method, but he saw something.
It's different. He did.
Yeah.
Cajal spent countless hours peering through his microscope.
Oh, wow.
Painstakingly sketching what he saw.
Gosh.
And it was through this meticulous observation that he arrived at the revolutionary concept of the neuron doctrine. He realized that neurons weren't actually physically connected in a continuous web, but they were discrete individual units.
So instead of that free-flowing energy network, it's more like a chain of islands.
That's a great analogy.
Each neuron sending a signal across a tiny gap to the next one.
That's a great analogy.
Wow.
And it completely changed the way we understand how the brain works.
I see.
Think about it. If the brain was just this continuous network, how would we explain things like specific memories, the ability to learn new skills? The neuron doctrine provided this framework for understanding the complexity and specificity of neural communication.
I mean, it also kind of blows the lid off the idea of, like, the soul as this, like, singular ethereal thing, doesn't it?
It does.
If the brain is made up of billions of these tiny individual cells communicating in precise ways, it starts to, like, paint a very different picture of consciousness.
That's a huge philosophical implication.
Yeah.
And one that I think Cajal was very aware of.
Okay.
He understood that his work wasn't only, like, revolutionizing science, but it was also challenged our fundamental understanding of what it means to be human.
And to think that he did all this with just a microscope, some stains, and his incredible artistic talent.
I know.
Those drawings weren't just illustrations.
Right.
They were like scientific evidence.
Yeah.
They were arguments made visible.
Absolutely. And his legacy extends far beyond the neuron doctrine.
Oh, okay.
He also discovered the axonal growth cone, the tiny structure that guides the growth and development of neurons.
Okay. Remind me about axonal growth cones.
Imagine a tiny microscopic hand reaching out.
Okay.
Feeling its way through the developing brain.
Okay.
Guiding the growth of a neuron towards its target.
Oh, wow.
That's the axonal growth cone.
So when babies are learning and forming, new connections in their brains, those little hands are hard at work.
Exactly.
Wow.
And this ties into another of Cajal's major contributions.
Okay.
The concept of neural plasticity.
Okay.
He was one of the first to recognize that the brain isn't static, that it can change and adapt throughout life.
Oh, okay.
And those axonal growth cones play a crucial role in that process.
I see. So every time we learn something new, every time we have a new experience, those little growth cones are out there, forging new pathways, rewiring our brains.
It's an incredible concept, isn't it?
It is.
And it has huge implications for things like recovery from brain injury or the potential for, lifelong learning.
Speaking of, groundbreaking discoveries and scientific legacies, I have to bring up the Nobel Prize.
Okay.
In 1906, Cajal wins the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine.
That's right.
But he has to share it with Camillo Golgi.
That's right. The very scientist whose staining method made Cajal's discoveries possible.
Wow.
But Golgi never accepted the neuron doctrine.
Really?
Yeah, he clung to the idea of the nervous system as a continuous network.
Wow.
even as his own technique was being used to disprove it.
Can you imagine, like, Golgi, like, on that stage, knowing his work was being used to dismantle his own beliefs?
I bet that was an awkward Nobel banquet.
What does that even say about, like, the nature of science itself?
I think it highlights the fact that science is a process of constant revision.
Right.
We build on the work of those who came before us.
Right.
Even if it means challenging their cherished theories.
Yeah.
And sometimes the tools we create to support one idea end up leading us to something completely different.
In this case, something different was a monumental shift.
It was.
In our understanding of the brain.
It was huge.
And it's so fascinating that, like, this whole story isn't just about the science. It's about, like, the personalities, the rivalries, just, like, Shakespearean drama of it all.
I mean, imagine being so brilliant that you win a Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
But your co-winner is the guy whose work you used to basically prove him wrong. And it makes you wonder.
It does.
Was Cajal driven in part by this rivalry with Golgi? Oh, I bet so.
Did it push him to be even more meticulous?
Probably.
Even more determined to prove his point?
Right. It's almost like this scientific clash of the titans is what ultimately propelled neuroscience forward.
But there's more to Cajal.
There is.
Than just neurons and Nobel Prizes.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this guy was fascinated by everything, right?
She was.
Photography, chess, even hypnosis.
That's right.
He even wrote science fiction.
He did.
Under the pseudonym Dr. Bacteria.
Dr. Bacteria.
What was going on there?
It makes you wonder if he ever slept.
Right.
Or if maybe his brain was, like, wired differently, you know, allowing him to make these, like, incredible leaps across different fields.
I think it speaks to a certain intellectual restlessness.
Yeah, yeah.
He wasn't content to stay in one lane.
Right.
You know? He had this insatiable curiosity, this drive to, like, explore and understand the world around him. Whether it was, you know, through a microscope, a camera lens, or even a fictional story.
Maybe that's what, like, true genius is. Not just, like, being brilliant in one area, but having this almost, like, childlike wonder that pushes you to keep learning, keep questioning, keep connecting the dots in unexpected ways.
So where does that leave us with Santiago Ramón y Cajal?
Yeah.
I mean, we've covered his, like, rebellious youth, his groundbreaking discoveries, his artistic talents,
his diverse interests,
even his, like, forays into science fiction and hypnosis, right?
It's pretty amazing.
What's, like, the one big takeaway you want our listener to walk away with?
For me, it's that reminder that science is a human endeavor. It's not just about cold, hard facts and equations, right? It's about passion, curiosity, even a bit of, like, healthy rivalry. Cajal's life was messy, unconventional, full of contradictions, but that's what makes it so fascinating.
And it makes his achievements all the more remarkable.
Right.
He wasn't just a brilliant scientist. He was a product of his time. His experiences, his personality. All of those things came together to create this, like, unique individual who revolutionized our understanding of the brain.
And his legacy lives on, not just in, like, textbooks and research labs, but in the way we think about ourselves, our brains, our potential.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, the next time you, like, learn something new, think about those tiny axonal growth cones reaching out, forging new connections, right? That's Cajal's legacy in action.
Okay, before we wrap up, I have to ask the like, classic time travel question.
Oh, okay.
If Cajal were alive today, with all the advancements in neuroscience, what mystery do you think he'd be most eager to tackle?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
Given his diverse interests, I mean, it could be anything from artificial intelligence to, you know, the ethics of brain-computer interfaces.
Knowing his, you know, passion for the brain's, like, physical structure. Maybe he'd be diving into connectomics. You know, like that effort to map every single neuron and synapse the brain.
Totally. I can, like, picture him leading a team poring over those like intricate maps, looking for the patterns that explain how billions of neurons give rise to thoughts, emotions, memories. It would be like a culmination of his lifelong quest to understand the brain's complexity.
Maybe just for fun.
Yeah.
He'd write like a science fiction story about it. Under the pseudonym, you know, Dr. Synapse or something.
Dr. Synapse. Love it.
And who knows, maybe he'd even like predict the next big breakthrough in neuroscience.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it past him.
I wouldn't either.
But one thing's for sure. Santiago Ramón y Cajal's work in his life continue to inspire us to explore the mysteries of the brain.
Absolutely.
To push the boundaries of what we know.
Keep asking questions.
And to never lose that sense of like wonder and curiosity.
I love that.
So to our listener, if you're, you know, feeling inspired to delve deeper into the world of neuroscience, go for it.
Do it.
There's a whole universe of knowledge out there.
There is.
Waiting to be discovered.
Absolutely.
And who knows, maybe you'll be the one to make the next big discovery.
You got it.
To add your own chapter to this incredible story.
To this amazing story.
But of the brain. Until then, keep those synapses firing.
And happy exploring.